You're sitting at the anchor desk of America's most watched cable news network, commanding millions of viewers and earning a seven-figure salary. The next moment, you're gone without a trace. No farewell, no explanation, just a single cold sentence from Fox News announcing they had parted ways with Kimberly Guilfoyle. For someone who built her career on being heard, the silence was deafening. What could make a network desperate enough to pay over $4 million just to make someone disappear? The truth behind Kimberly Guilfoyle's shocking exit from Fox News reveals a darker side of media power and shows how quickly a career can crumble when the cameras stop rolling. Before we dive into what really happened behind those Fox News doors, you need to understand just how far Kimberly Guilfoyle had climbed. Because the higher you rise, the harder you fall. San Francisco, 1969. A little girl loses her mother to leukemia at age 11. And that tragedy becomes the fuel that would drive her for decades. Kimberly Guilfoyle wasn't born into privilege. She was forged by pain. That early loss taught her something most people never learn, that everything you love can vanish in an instant. Her father, an Irish immigrant who worked construction, and her Puerto Rican mother had built a modest life in the Mission District. But when cancer took her mother, young Kimberly discovered that stability was an illusion. This realization would shape every decision she made for the rest of her life. She channeled that fear into ambition, clawing her way through law school, while most of her peers were figuring out what they wanted to be when they grew up. The courtroom became her first stage. As a prosecutor in Los Angeles, then later in San Francisco, she developed something rare: the ability to make complex cases feel personal. She didn't just argue cases. She told stories that juries couldn't ignore. But here's where most people get the story wrong. They think her television career was some calculated move, a strategic pivot from law to media. The truth is far more interesting. In 2000, when she first stepped in front of a camera as a legal analyst, she was just trying to pay the bills. Her marriage to Gavin Newsom was ending, her legal career had peaked, and she needed a new direction. What nobody expected was how natural she looked on screen. While other legal experts sounded like they were reading from textbooks, Kimberly spoke like she was having a conversation with a friend. She could break down the most complex legal battles into terms your grandmother could understand. And she did it with confidence that made viewers trust her completely. By 2004, Court TV had given her a regular slot on both sides. This wasn't some polite legal discussion. This was television as blood sport, and Kimberly was a natural gladiator. She could argue either side of a case with equal passion, a skill that would serve her well in the partisan battles to come. But it was Fox News that truly changed everything. When they called in 2006, Kimberly knew this was her shot at the big leagues. Her rise at Fox was meteoric. Within 5 years, she had secured the ultimate prize, a coveted spot on the 5. The format was perfect for her skills. She wasn't just providing legal analysis anymore. She was diving into heated political debates, offering sharp commentary on everything from foreign policy to cultural issues. By the mid-2010s, Kimberly Guilfoyle had achieved something most television personalities can only dream of. She had become indispensable. Her salary reflected her value. 7 figures. The kind of money that comes with serious influence and serious expectations. She was no longer just a Fox News host. She was a brand unto herself. But success in television is a double-edged sword. The higher your profile, the more scrutiny you face. And in Kimberly's case, someone very close to her was watching very carefully. Someone who was about to change everything. July 2018 started like any other month for Kimberly Guilfoyle. She was at the height of her powers, co-hosting The Five for millions of viewers, commanding respect from colleagues and fear from political opponents. But then something happened that would send shockwaves through the media world. and the official story makes absolutely no sense. Fox News released a statement that was as brief as it was shocking. One sentence announcing they had parted ways with her. No explanation, no farewell tribute, no acknowledgement of her years of service. For a woman who had spent over a decade building Fox's afternoon programming into a ratings juggernaut, the silence was deafening. If you've been following the media for any length of time, you know that high-profile departures don't happen this way. When Bill O'Reilly left Fox, even in disgrace, there were headlines and analysis pieces. When Megyn Kelly departed for NBC, it was a media circus, but Kimberly Guilfoyle, she simply vanished. The contrast was stark and telling. O'Reilly got a farewell segment, acknowledging his contributions despite the scandals. Kelly received public statements wishing her well. Guilfoyle got a corporate press release that read like a termination notice. The official narrative was neat and tidy. Kimberly had decided to leave television to pursue opportunities in politics, specifically to work on President Trump's 2020 campaign. On paper, it sounded logical. She had always been politically active. She had connections in Republican circles, and campaign work offered the kind of high-profile platform she craved. But here's what didn't add up: timing, process, and precedent. First, the timing was bizarre. July 2018 was more than 2 years before the 2020 election. Major campaign roles typically don't materialize that far in advance. Second, the process was unprecedented. Fox personalities of Kimberly's stature don't just disappear overnight. Third, when had Fox ever been so eager to lose one of their biggest stars without any public fanfare? The network had fought to keep far less valuable personalities in the past. The willingness to let Guilfoyle go so easily suggested something else was driving the decision. Within days, the rumors started flying. Media insiders began whispering about internal issues and behind-the-scenes problems. But perhaps the most telling detail was what didn't happen. Kimberly, who had built her career on being outspoken, barely addressed her exit. For someone who had never shied away from controversy, this sudden reluctance to discuss her departure was a massive red flag. Her social media posts became generic and infrequent. Her public statements were brief and carefully scripted. The speed of her transition to political work was equally suspicious. Within weeks, Kimberly was appearing at Trump rallies, raising money for Republican candidates, and throwing herself into campaign activities with an intensity that seemed almost desperate. It was as if she was trying to move so quickly that no one would have time to ask uncomfortable questions. Meanwhile, Fox News moved on with surgical precision. The Five continued without missing a beat. There were no nostalgic montages, no mentions of her contributions to the network's success, no acknowledgement that one of their biggest stars had simply vanished. For loyal viewers, this erasure was jarring. One day, they were watching Kimberly deliver her trademark passionate commentary, and the next day she was simply gone. The lack of explanation left a void that speculation quickly filled. But the network offered no clarification. What none of us knew was that while Kimberly was making public appearances and building her new political career, a very different story was being documented in 2,000 corporate boardrooms and legal offices. A story that would eventually surface and reveal just how far Fox News was willing to go to make certain stories disappear. For 2 years, the real reason behind Kimberly Guilfoyle's departure remained hidden, behind corporate confidentiality agreements and carefully managed public relations. Then, in October 2020, The New Yorker published an investigative piece that shattered the carefully constructed narrative and revealed a truth so disturbing that it changed everything we thought we knew about her exit. The story began with a young woman who had taken what seemed like a dream job, working as an assistant to one of Fox News's biggest stars. What she got instead was a nightmare that would haunt her for years. According to the New Yorker's report, This assistant had filed a confidential 42-page complaint against Kimberly Guilfoyle in November 2018, months after Kimberly had already left the network. The timing was crucial. It meant Fox News had been dealing with serious internal allegations while publicly maintaining that her departure was voluntary and amicable. The allegations detailed in that complaint were shocking in their scope and disturbing in their specificity. According to sources familiar with the complaint, the assistant alleged that Guilfoyle had subjected her to systematic workplace abuse that went far beyond anything that could be considered normal professional behavior. This wasn't just about inappropriate comments or occasional boundary crossing. The allegations painted a picture of someone who used her position of power to create a hostile work environment that crossed every conceivable boundary of professional conduct. The assistant alleged that she was frequently required to work at Guilfoyle's New York apartment, while the Fox host displayed herself naked, creating an environment where the young woman felt trapped and uncomfortable but unable to leave without risking her job. Even more disturbing were allegations that Guilfoyle would show her assistant photographs of male genitalia from men she had been involved with. See. These weren't accidental glimpses. They were deliberate actions designed to humiliate and control. The assistant also alleged that Guilfoyle spoke incessantly about her esmoire life, forcing her employee to listen to graphic details that had nothing to do with work, but everything to do with establishing dominance. The complaint alleged that Guilfoyle demanded physical contact, crossing the line from verbal harassment to physical demands. The pattern of alleged behavior extended beyond harassment into broader workplace abuse. The complaint alleged that Guilfoyle encouraged her assistant to sleep with wealthy and powerful men, essentially asking her to shoot herself for professional advancement. She allegedly demanded that her assistant share rooms during business trips, eliminating any possibility of privacy or professional boundaries. These weren't isolated incidents. The allegations described a consistent pattern of degrading, abusive, and inappropriate behavior that made the assistant's job unbearable and violated every standard of professional conduct. What makes this story even more disturbing is how the assistant tried to handle the situation. She initially attempted to address these issues through informal channels, hoping that a conversation could resolve the problems. She wasn't looking to destroy anyone's career. She just wanted to do her job without being subjected to treatment that no employee should endure. When informal approaches failed, she tried working within the system, hoping that Fox News' Human Resources Department could address the situation professionally. But when the assistant finally decided she had to take formal action, things allegedly got worse. According to the New Yorker's reporting, Guilfoyle allegedly attempted to interfere with the investigation and even tried to pay off the assistant to prevent her from revealing details to the lawyers Fox News had hired. The investigation that followed was thorough and expensive. Fox News hired an outside law firm to handle the situation, bringing in experts who specialized in workplace harassment cases. Throughout this entire process, which lasted months, the public had no idea what was happening. While Fox was dealing with serious internal allegations, they maintained the fiction that Kimberly's departure had been voluntary. The settlement that Fox News reached wasn't just significant, it was staggering. According to multiple reports, the network paid the assistant more than $4 million to resolve the matter. $4 million. To put that in perspective, that's more than most Americans will earn in their entire working lives, paid to resolve a single workplace complaint. This wasn't a nuisance settlement. This was the kind of money that suggests Fox News took these allegations very seriously and wanted to ensure the matter would never become public. The payment came with strict confidentiality agreements that prevented the assistant from ever discussing the allegations, the investigation, or the settlement. The magnitude of the settlement raises uncomfortable questions about what Fox News executives believed had actually happened. Companies don't pay millions of dollars to resolve frivolous complaints. This was money paid to buy complete silence about allegations that the network clearly considered damaging enough to justify an enormous financial outlay. Meanwhile, Kimberly was building an entirely new career in political activism. Her transition to Trump's campaign wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. She was dating Donald Trump Jr., which gave her access to the highest levels of Republican politics and a platform that rivaled her television career in terms of influence and visibility. But here's what's fascinating. For someone who had built her reputation on being outspoken and confrontational, she became remarkably silent about one specific topic. In interviews, at rallies, during public appearances, Kimberly would discuss almost anything except her departure from Fox News. When reporters asked about her exit, her answers were carefully scripted and suspiciously brief. She would mention her desire to work in politics, her excitement about new challenges, her gratitude for her time at Fox, but she never provided details, never explained the timing, never addressed the abrupt nature of her departure. For someone who had never shied away from controversy, this sudden reluctance to discuss her own professional history was telling. It suggested that there were aspects of her departure that couldn't be addressed publicly without significant risk. The silence served multiple purposes. It allowed her to control the narrative around her career transition, protected her new relationships in Republican politics, and, most importantly, it protected Fox News. Despite paying millions to settle serious allegations, the network was able to move forward without significant public scrutiny. Fox News handled the entire situation with surgical precision. They removed a potentially problematic personality, paid to ensure silence, and continued their programming without interruption. The Five remained a rating success, and the network avoided the kind of extended scandal that had plagued them in previous years. For the assistant, the settlement meant financial security, but also permanent silence. She had come forward with serious allegations about workplace abuse, and while she received substantial compensation, she could never tell her story publicly. When the New Yorker story finally broke in 2020, it revealed not just what had allegedly happened, but how far powerful institutions will go to protect their reputations and how much money they're willing to spend to buy silence. Kimberly's representatives issued strong denials, and she eventually stated publicly that she had never engaged in workplace misconduct of any kind. But even after the story became public, Kimberly continued to maintain her silence about the specifics. She denied the allegations broadly, but she didn't engage with the details, didn't provide alternative explanations for her departure, didn't address why Fox News would pay millions to settle frivolous claims. For years after the New Yorker exposé, Kimberly Guilfoyle maintained her public persona with remarkable discipline. She appeared at rallies, raised millions for Republican candidates, and built a new identity as a political power broker. But beneath the surface, something else was happening. At 55, in a rare moment of unguarded honesty that broke through years of carefully managed public statements, Kimberly finally revealed the true cost of her departure from Fox News. In a conversation that caught even seasoned political observers off guard, she made an admission that shocked everyone who heard it. The scandal had ruined her. The words carried more weight than any legal brief, corporate statement, or public denial. For someone who had spent her entire career projecting strength, control, and unshakable confidence, this admission of vulnerability was unprecedented. She described losing everything she had worked for in a matter of days. No explanation, no defense, just erasure. 20 years of building a career, building relationships, building trust with audiences, and it was all gone overnight. This wasn't the confident, combative Kimberly that audiences knew from television or political rallies. This was someone grappling with the reality that a single allegation regardless of its validity, had the power to erase decades of professional achievement in an instant. She talked about how people act like you can just move on, like you can rewrite your own story and make everyone forget. But they don't forget. They never do. Every introduction includes a reference to the controversy. Every profile mentions the allegations. Every success is qualified with phrases like, "despite her past troubles." The admission revealed something that all her political success, all her fundraising achievements, all her high-profile relationships had failed to hide. The scandal had left deep psychological scars that no amount of external validation could heal. She described the transformation from being someone people look up to, someone people respect, to a name they whisper about. It wasn't just losing a job, it was losing an identity. When you've built your whole sense of self around professional achievement, around being seen as successful and competent, losing that foundation changes everything. She reflected on giving Fox News everything. Her energy, her ideas, her loyalty. She helped build shows, brought in viewers, made them money. And the moment it became inconvenient, the moment someone made allegations, she was gone. No goodbyes, no second chances, no opportunity to defend herself, just silence. The bitterness was unmistakable, revealing resentment that years of political success hadn't been able to diminish. Despite building a new career, despite finding love, despite remaining in the public eye, she had never truly escaped the shadow of her Fox News departure. Perhaps the most revealing part of her admission was what it said about the nature of power in the media industry. For all her success, for all her influence, for all her seven-figure salary, she had discovered that it could all disappear overnight, based on allegations that might never be proven or disproven in any meaningful way. She described how that silence had been her greatest burden. It had followed her through every stage of her reinvention, every public appearance, every headline that refused to let the story die. You can't really move forward when part of you is always looking back, always wondering what people know or think they know. The admission also revealed the impossible position that scandal creates for public figures. Deny too vigorously and you look guilty. Remain silent and people assume the worst. Try to move on and you're accused of avoiding accountability. There's no path that leads to complete vindication or total redemption. She acknowledged that she was still standing, that she had built something new, found new purpose, new love, new ways to make a difference. But she would never be the same person she was before this happened. Part of her died in that silence, and no amount of success could bring it back. Her reflection poses a haunting question that extends far beyond her specific situation. If one moment, one allegation, one decision could erase everything you built, how would you fight to reclaim your name? How do you prove a negative? How do you defend yourself against whispers? It's a question that resonates in an age where careers can be destroyed by social media accusations, where allegations travel faster than facts, where the court of public opinion operates by different rules than legal systems. The mathematics of modern scandal are brutal and unforgiving. Decades of achievement can be erased by moments of controversy. Today, Kimberly Guilfoyle remains a prominent figure in Republican politics, but she's also forever linked to the scandal that ended her media career. The assistant received substantial financial compensation, but remains bound by confidentiality agreements that prevent her from ever telling her side of the story. Fox News moved on without acknowledging the cost of their silence. Whatever the complete truth of what happened behind those Fox News doors, it was expensive enough, serious enough, and damaging enough that a major news network was willing to pay millions to keep it quiet. The real lesson isn't necessarily about guilt or innocence. It's about power, accountability, and the price of silence in an industry built on the promise of telling the truth.